Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good evening to you all. We had decided to give you a few minutes to be part of the discussion as we realized rain interrupted probably most of you as you are trying to maybe rush somewhere to connecting. But I would want to welcome you. It's a pleasure to be with you as we do our 7th episode of the Miic Jumpstart Innovation Learning Series. Probably for those who have not been with us, if this is your first time to be with us, Mackay Innovation and Incubation Center, Miic, does host these sessions every Friday with a specific theme or topic of discussion. And then we normally look out for guests, and these are experts or professionals in a number of fields. So if I can introduce our guest of tonight, our guest is none other than Badru Ntege. Badru is known to most of us because he has been in this ecosystem for quite a while, probably more than 2 decades, as he will probably introduce himself and talk about it. But he has been in this ecosystem for quite a while, and he understands the challenges, the opportunities that we need to take care of as entrepreneurs and innovators. So today, Badru will be sharing with us particularly on how we can harness the technology, the infrastructure that we have to employ fintech in our businesses. I know part of our call, we have agribusinessmen and ladies, we have those who are into the health sector, those who are into education and etc. But we have an opportunity to employ or get prepared to start employing fintech in all our businesses, as it is the way to go currently. So without wasting time, because we have already lost about 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome our guest. He will introduce himself much more than I've done, but I know he will share with us his experience, especially with NFT Consult. And maybe Badru, as you introduce yourself, most of our participants have always wanted to have a discussion on how they can easily expand. So we want to have a little bit of your history on how you were able to enter markets in Burundi, in Tanzania, in Kenya, and all the other branches, offices that you have put across Africa. It is one of the questions that normally comes in our sessions. So Mr. Badru Ntege, allow me to welcome you and give you the platform for you to share with our entrepreneurs who are eagerly waiting to listen to what you will say. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you, Gilbert, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, welcome everybody. I want to kind of try and understand how we're going to do this. I have a short presentation for us to discuss, and then I'll be very open to questions. Maybe Gilbert, if people can put some of their comments and questions in the chat room, and then you can help us in terms of responding to those.
That's right.
I always find it hard talking about myself, so let me try and see what I can say and how I can maybe touch some of the areas that you've kind of asked about. I've been in the sector for quite some time now, and say 20 years or plus. And yes, it's an interesting growth. And the challenge you asked about, how do you grow your business? It's really your ability to focus and understand your ecosystem and be aware of your entire ecosystem. That's how you keep on growing, and we'll touch a bit of that later. But your ability to identify changes as either they happen around you. Some of them you can plan, and some of them we don't plan. None of us planned COVID. And I think one of the, must have been someone from Ford who said that of all the scenarios that we've done in strategic planning, no one had ever planned a situation when the economy will be switched off. So, but still, when that happens, you must be agile enough to be able to get back and stand and be able to move forward. So this afternoon, I'm going to talk about the topic was interesting, and I'll share how I have translated that topic. Yeah. And at the same time, I'd like to really keep it as much interactive as we can make it. I tend to find I'm adapting to these sessions when you're sitting down. I'm usually a person who likes to walk around the room and interact more.
Yeah.
So, so we'll see. So I believe I'm able to share.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now the question is, where do I find my slides? So give me a few minutes. I'm one of those people who tends to have 50 slides on their deck.
Okay.
Is it? No, this is not it. Stop share. Sorry. I tend to have a lot more activity.
Yeah.
As much as we deny our eyes, this must be it.
Okay.
Share. How? I'm trying to share the screen. Which screen do you see? I come back. This is what we should have done while we were waiting for people to join us.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I was late.
Okay.
Sorry, what screen do you see?
It's still coming.
It's not loaded yet?
It's not yet, but we see it trying. Oh, it has not come yet.
I have shared, but I've not received. Okay. I'm sure it's not a connectivity issue because we are able to connect well.
Yeah.
It's showing some sort of a screen, Badra.
What screen is showing?
It's a fun. It's like a portion of your screen.
Yeah, a little bit of it. Yeah, shows just a portion of it. Yeah.
Are you? What are you using? Keynote.
Yes.
Have you put it in play? I think go to play and then.
Let me stop sharing and go back to Keynote.
Yeah, and then play, and then share. Well, in any case, share your screen, but then do the play.
Sorry, guys. Maybe as we get. Okay, Gilbert, give me a few minutes. Let me just disconnect and I'll find out why it's not sharing. Just give me a few minutes, please.
Alternatively, you can send it to me and then I can share it here. So as our guest tries to connect, gentlemen and ladies, please feel free to put up your questions in our chat room as he gets ready to make his presentation. But otherwise, I want to thank you for joining me.
Hubert, please remove the screen so I can attempt to share.
Okay, let me just share this. Let me get out.
Do you have a screen shared?
Yeah, we have it.
Yes, it's you got something. You got a fintech puzzle there.
Yeah.
It's the wrong one that I'm sharing.
Sorry.
Okay. Some weird reason, I've just finished another meeting perfectly, and this one has played. All right.
So sorry.
I think just proves the point that technology is not the only solution.
Yeah.
Are we ready now? I think we have the right screen now.
Awesome. We can see it.
All right. Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all right.
Okay. This is the title, but I wanted to add something at the bottom. That little statement. It is just to kind of help all of us understand that when we're in the innovating ecosystem, we're really looking at how original our solution is and where the value is, as opposed to what is the next person doing.
Yeah.
And really, when you're looking all the time at what is the next person doing, I read this quote somewhere, and I think it's perfect for us to realign how we innovate.
Yeah.
So the fintech puzzle is what you saw earlier. And again, I'm going to come back to look at the topic of the word fintech when we actually mention and talk about fintech. I think fintech as a word has been kind of overused, and we need to figure out what we mean. And this puzzle is not exhaustive, but it kind of tells you the different pieces of really what we're talking about here. There is an infrastructure.
Yeah.
There are a number of technology companies in play.
Yeah.
Financial institutions, and obviously our space, the green space, where really life happens. This is what happens in that green space is really trying to fix what 1, 2, and 4 are trying to do and not doing very well. And eventually you will see that 1, 2, and 4 cannot disappear from when the customer is looking at a service, the customer is usually looking for a value, an outcome, not the different prerequisite components. And as long as you're in a process where you're very much aware of the different components, then you have a problem. If you kind of think of, if you ever call a help desk for support, you will notice that when the help desk is tell you, oh, the engineers are coming in, and it's only at the help desk time that people tell you the components of the service you've been consuming. So as long as we're aware of the different components of the value, then it needs to be innovated, it needs to be changed, it needs to be fixed. Okay, and that's tend to be in terms of my approach to looking at innovation and what we can do with it and what we should be doing with it. Then I looked at the word technology infrastructure in our title, and the discussion now looks at really, when I say technology infrastructure, what am I talking about? We're usually talking about the software, and most of the times in Uganda, in our innovation ecosystem, we're heavily at the software space. Yeah. If you look at most of our innovators, most of the time we're tending to look at, it's a software solution. We're not looking at the equipment side of it. We're not looking at the facilities. And what does facilities mean? Usually where we're hosting. Are there any other structures around it? Connectivity. And then that final piece that we're still struggling with in Uganda, which is regulation. What is the regulation technology around everything we're doing around financial services, everything we're changing around the payment process? We tend to find, and the fact is in Uganda, we're we're far behind. If you look at the statistics, when we talk about financing in this country, they will now start talking about central bank, BOU. BOU supervises about 26 banks in this country. The 26 banks collectively maybe have 5 million bank accounts. And that is in a population of about 44 million people. Now, 80% of our financial regulation in this country is looking at that space. We looked at what technology has brought in terms of our mobile, our closest innovation around financing in this country has been mobile money. And that has come into the market, and it has picked up over 22 million subscribers. Yeah. And if you think about it, the banks have been in this country for the last 80 years plus.
That's right.
Okay. Mobile money came into this country in about 2007, 2008. No, sorry. Was it? Yeah, about
that, yeah.
Mobile money. So in about 10 years, 2020, yeah, in about 15 years, they have actually managed to bank 4 times more people, or reach 4 times more people than the banks. Right? So you can tell where we need to be thinking very, very much in terms of when you look at the regulations that BOU put out on banks. They're spending a lot of time regulating around equipment, facilities, and structures. And that is keeping them very busy, but not really delivering value. Yeah. So it's important to, I'm not saying that those points are not important, but I'm actually saying that we need to rethink how we look at how we innovate this financial services space. I want to now then to go back, as I always like going back to what do we mean when we say something. So I did a quick Google search, and this is copy and paste. As fintech companies integrate technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and data science to traditional financial sectors to make them safer, faster. So if you think about it, the key thing as what we do in fintech is really look at the data we're playing with, the technology in terms of blockchain, and how we're thinking about the information that we're gathering. So the banks have hundreds and hundreds of records on literally every single transaction you're making. But what value is it? The issue of payments and loans, credit scoring, it does exist, but doesn't really exist to add value. The credit scoring we have in this country exists to say yes or no to anybody. Now tell me anybody who has ever borrowed money and never had issues returning it on time. You've always had one reason or another, but you've eventually managed to pay it back. So our system here is geared to really locking the door or opening the door. There's no in between. There's no using that information, right? So there are opportunities around for us to think through when we're thinking about what we're doing in terms of the financial services and I then thought of really going down deeper and say, let's talk about what are the top 10 fintech companies in the world and how do they operate?
Yeah.
So I want to share, and this again is research, but it's really point reference is Investopedia.
Okay.
So number one in the world in terms of fintech, and this list changes quite often. So when you look at it next week, it might be different. But at the moment, it's Ant Financial.
Yeah.
Ant Financial is based in China, part of the Alibaba group. Okay, and it originated the Alipay platform. And I need you to think also now about Alibaba and a word that I want us to think as we go through here, a word called ecosystem. Okay. And now you looked at number two is Aiden, which is a single platform. And again, it's looking at payments, but through sales channel. Right? But it also integrates an ecosystem of social media, Facebook, Uber, Netflix, Spotify, right? And Microsoft. Number three is Kudian. Again, a Chinese-based lending business. Okay, and this is micro lending. It has a micro lending site. Okay, so I'll maybe look at what we do when we borrow from the networks, MTN or Airtel. Number four is a really interesting company, and basically it's a financial services software as a service. Again, when we're thinking about innovating here again, as regulation and URA becomes more functional, if URA needs to expand right now, I'm not sure how far that has changed, but we're probably looking about 20 to 30% of your tax base being compliant, or potential market paying taxes. Zero simplifies this process so that small corner shops, etc., are able to pay their taxes. Right? So it's number four. Interesting, number five is actually student loan business. Now, student loans have just started here. The question is, how many of us are thinking about innovating around the student loan conversation? Okay. But out of the top 10 companies, student loan business is one of the biggest. So how many students do we have in Uganda, and how do we innovate around that? And the infrastructure play around that. Then you have Lufax, again, a Chinese company. So one thing I want us to pay attention to also as we go through this, let me just go back to slide number 5. In slide number 5, we have 3 Chinese companies. one Asian Australian side of the world, and US. When you go to the bottom five, it's leads by a Chinese company. Again, this is peer-to-peer lending. Avant is a US company. Okay, again, a lending company.
Yeah.
And number 8 is Zhong'an Online Insurance Company. So this is the first insurance company in the top 10.
Yeah.
Number 9 I like is a company called Klarna, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Klarna with what we're doing with our partners in Uganda. And then number 10 is Oscar Health. So we've looked at mainly finance, lending, we looked at transactions, one insurance company and a health company. That makes up the top 10 fintech companies in the world.
Wow.
The question then that goes to us in Uganda is how many in these different fields, how many of our, if I was to list the top 10 fintech companies in Uganda, where would we be? Unfortunately, we don't have enough data, but I would really like to, if we could actually set up that for Uganda to see where we're playing, where are our companies playing, what field are they in, and how do we build from that? So my next look at this is taking you back now to the conversation we had about the infrastructure and what it means. And when we look at the second column in here where I have developed, now I wanted to look at a series of how our sector should grow, how it is growing in some areas, and what we're actually doing. If you look at most of the fintech solutions that were coming out in Uganda are softwares that we've developed individually, and the companies that actually offering these services are fully in-house with integrators and developers, and it's an in-house product. You find that 80% of all those companies are hosting at Amazon,
Yeah.
yet they're aiming for local consumption. So they don't have any facilities. Structures, most of our fintech companies, should I use the word fintech? We don't really have structures. We're basing our distribution of our services on the internet. And there's no regulatory technology in our space at the moment. It's very low. There is a Payment Act that was supposed to be passed recently, and I think it was. I'm yet to feel any impact on that. The next phase of evolution is where we're now coming with integrated solutions, where we have a fintech startup with a particular solution, which has a focus, but now you're integrating with other pieces to actually really have a solution. For value, that should be locally hosted. And we should appreciate that we're in a mobile fast economy. So whatever you're trying to put out there on in a fintech ecosystem must be mobile as a first option. Facilities, you should not be hosting anything outside the country. If you're looking at fintech, even if you're looking at regional growth, eventually, the piece that we miss on the business side is when I'm hosting in a market like Amazon, he is charging you at a market rate, and the market rate is a global market rate. But your target market is a local target market, where your variables are very different. You don't have the multiples of a company in the UK or in the US. So you're going to start slow. If you get 200 transactions a week on your platform, you're doing well. But it's those 200 that are going to build the rest of your transactions on your fintech solution. But if you've now priced yourself at a baseline that is looking for 1,000 transactions at 5 cents each, you're not in the market, so you're going to come up short in terms of financing. And a lot of young companies that are trying to set up are actually being hit by that actual point. Okay? We're looking to a point where the connectivity should be open. Now, when we say connectivity should be open, we're not saying that we should be out there lobbying to government to give us free internet. We should be coming with a solution that, as it goes to market, it can actually cover its connectivity piece, because that's the market we're in. And that connectivity piece in most of the telcos have different solutions. We're currently experimenting on a solution from one of the telcos, which is reverse billing, which means that as long as I've set a URL to my particular service, all my users don't, as long as they're coming to my platform, they don't have to pay internet. It comes, it's a free service. And those are interesting business models that we need to think through as we're trying to figure out how we're getting into this market. Again, in this space, you're going to find that regulation will be reactive. It is when you actually now create a solution and now suddenly you want to integrate with a bank, suddenly there is no regulatory space there. So you now need to go talk to some people in BOU who will then go through a different song and dance until they get to something that works. Half the time, what they arrive with will not be the perfect solution, but you cannot wait for them because they're in a reactive phase. We're hoping that in coming period, they will become proactive. So the next phase that for me is the perfect solution that we should be aiming at is a fully integrated solution where I get the value, but I don't really need to know anything about the platform at the back end. That is the real solution that we should be looking at the end of the day. So the infrastructure behind your fintech solution should be invisible to any user. And as we drive that way, we have to actually now look at these other areas that we've talked about and see how do we mitigate those to get to this, where the whole back end is invisible to the user. And for me, that is really where the gold is for anybody looking at innovating in this space. Then I want to look at, having said all of that, we then now go back and look at innovation and the different types of innovation, because this is why we startups. This is why we're sitting in innovation hubs. We're innovating to make that difference. And the 10 areas that tend to be discussed area are these 10 that I've put here. You look at a profit model. Remember, I talked about the value of where you locate your servers, because that impacts the profit model. Your service, how are you charging the service model? How are people joining the service? Connections with others to create value. If your solution cannot integrate with other solutions, then you have a problem. Which is why you see, as much as it was forced by regulation and suddenly it's not possible, I should be able to send my mobile money to anybody on any network. Because if I cannot, then that is a lost sell to the network that I can't, where I cannot send money to, okay? There's the issue about structure. Now, this is the alignment of your talent and your assets. And again, I will refer this back to you down the road when I'm sharing a case study of of what we are doing at NFT Consult. Process is important. How that works, and without process, you cannot get repeatability, and without repeatability, you cannot get growth. Product performance, what are the features, what is functionality? A lot of organizations suffer here, and item number 5 is really down to your agility. When you decide to push your product out, you must be prepared for a number of sleepless nights if you want to be able to survive, because when you push your product out, you get, let's say you pushed your payment app onto the market, you get different types of people. You'll get that person who downloads it once, tries it and forgets it on their phone. You get the other person who downloads it and wants to keep trying, wants to keep testing. Now that particular person is very good because they're always going to be pushing your product. They're going to be crashing your product, but you need to be able to respond to them, because as you respond to them, they become your free consultant. They're the ones, if they know that, you know, when I pushed this product and it broke, I spoke to these guys and they fixed it, he's going to keep on pushing. If he speaks to you and you don't fix it, he won't push. Okay? We need to look at the systems, the service, what channels are you looking at? Then branding is important. But you see, branding is important depending on how you want to play with your product as well. If your product is going to be part and parcel of other products, then you need to be branding to the right people and not branding to the wrong people. If you're, let me bring in the terms of B2B and B2C. The B2B component means that you are part of another person's brand and solution. So you gotta be careful not to ever try to be bigger than the brand that you're working underneath. And we make that mistake quite a lot. It also means that you have to limit your, what I call the bragging quotient. You can't go and say, no, his platform is running because my engine is underneath it. That also creates a problem for you. So the branding is also somewhere where you have to be very careful how we do that. The most important thing, obviously, is customer engagement. All the 9 above are useless if you don't have the customer engagement. So in this first part, I wanted us just to look at this picture of fintech from a slightly different angle. I didn't want to go through the traditional angles. I just want to create some questioning points, and I'm hoping that we'll have a little bit more dialogue. But as we go there, let me just take a few slides to give you an idea what we're now doing at NFT. And on your right, you're seeing 2 interesting pictures, right? So we have decided to actually innovate in a very crazy way. And you'll ask, why am I talking about this? Then you'll see back to the story of where your solution must be invisible. Then it's a real solution. So NFT has decided that we're going to go into the mobility space. The mobility space is, how do we move people around the city? This is a population of 44 million. Kampala has about 4 million people coming into the city. If you just looked at borders in this country, there's about 800,000 borders. And these are moving around and ferrying people on a daily basis, right? On average, a border, on average, will make about 40,000 shillings a day. Okay, that is, they're doing 2 trips an hour on an 8-hour shift. They're probably charging between 2,000 to 3,000 shillings per trip. So that's not a bad pay for a day, but when you multiply it across, So NFT has decided that why don't we just go into this space in terms of innovation, right? So how do I get into this space? So the numbers on the side, this is our 5-year target. In 5 years, we will actually have 8,000 motorbikes in the country with 12,000 riders. And we've created a whole partner clients around where we'll have people feeding our riders, we'll have garages fixing our cars, our bikes. But then the blue one you see on top there is another interesting space that we're looking at innovate. These are self-ride electric motorbikes. I'm crazily thinking that I should have 80% of that built in Uganda, but that will be electronic in all ways. You will be able to go to a station, take out your smartphone with our app that will show you later, click on it, pay your 2,000 shillings an hour, ride your bike, get you where you want to go and stop. Why are we thinking about that? If you think about regulation everywhere, people are trying to get motorbikes out of the city, but the people are still in the city. The reason for the last 6 weeks Kampala is congested is because regardless, people need to move around. So hopefully, you saw it here first, but hopefully in 6 months' time, you'll see these blue things around the city, right? And that to me is where innovation works through. So let's continue down on this presentation. So the vision of what we're looking at is, and this is still innovation, is what we see this value chain you see here. So when you start a small business of border borders, which we've decided to go into, will be hopefully by the end of this year, there'll be 500 of those, and we'll grow that number to 8,000. But each of those units has a phone device on it. Each of those units has to be tracked. But the minute you switch that engine on, there is money moving, whether money is moving to the petrol station, whether money is moving somewhere. I hope you're seeing the financial conversation coming into here and why that conversation now fits into fintech. So what we're actually putting in place is a fintech solution, but it's to everybody else, it looks physical, but in the back end, it's actually a fintech solution. Okay. And we can talk a bit deeper about that. How does that fintech solution work? This is a vision that we're actually hopefully discussing. You saw it first here. If you see it again, it will have moved. If you don't see it, it won't have moved. We're now talking about contact tracing. The reason we don't have border borders in Kampala today is because the question is, how do we track these things? How do we track who is on the border and who's not on the border? If we're looking at contact tracing, we have people sitting in a taxi. How do I know who sat in a taxi and who didn't? So we're proposing that we'll create our wallet. You pay by your wallet when you jump into any of these, any transport methods. So if I know that you paid for a taxi in the morning using your wallet, and in that taxi there was somebody who turns up to have been corona or COVID positive, I can tell everybody who was in that taxi when it came in from Nansana, because I already have their digital fingerprint somewhere. So innovation goes into that particular space. But I can also now turn into shopping space, right? But when I'm going into digital services, I still have to pay digitally if I'm doing my e-commerce. So we're creating a value chain, right? So we have the online value chain where you can go and buy anything from poultry, electronic, health services, books, right? And these are the things that we're innovating, working around with my team and partners that we'll share later. So we have not yet moved away from fintech. I hope you're all aware. You might be thinking, where is he taking us? Then I'll talk to you about the entire value chain of how goods move from a factory through distribution to the shop, and eventually to you walking into a shop and buying, or you sitting at your house and taking out the app and ordering. So there are already people doing delivery in the market, and we were very excited about the innovation, but is that really innovation? If I don't go to a supermarket now and decide to call somebody who has put a supermarket in a warehouse so that I can order, that is not innovation, but it's change. It's different. It's different, but is that innovation enough? How about if I allow you to be able to order directly from the same corner shop that you buy from every day, get the items you want, and they can be delivered to you at your house. So we're digitizing the corner shop. But if I just digitize the corner shop and I don't digitize the distribution process, then I've not really helped a lot. So we're creating an ecosystem around all of this. And now the project I've given you, I'll just take you back to this particular slide. Every single part of this slide, as you see, will be online. Every single transaction in this part will be through a wallet. Okay, so this entire ecosystem, when fully running, will be 100% cashless. Now that is fintech infrastructure, because that's how you build the rest of the fintechs, right? So we just need to flip our conversation a little bit away. And again, if I take you back to here, we've ignored all this conversation. This we don't want to know. We're just here, the service, okay? So the conversation now about financial services and innovation has moved away from me making a payment app to actually making a functional solution. And eventually, the concept of the word fintech should disappear. And we really now focus back down to what are we fixing and how are we fixing it. The process of payment is always going to be functional, always going to be there. But the method of how we do that is what's completely going to change. And I'm just going to move around different slides because I'm trying to flow a conversation. So currently, I'm sure you're all aware when you go to a shop and there is a Momo Pay, there's an Airtel Pay, there is a Visa sign. And if you do not want to use cash, you are using one of these three. And when you're using one of these three, your merchant on this end must have a small Katochi form, and then they tell you whether you have seen they wait for the payment to happen. They've received the number, then they'll ask for your phone number. If you're using your card, they're going to run around looking for the machine, and sometimes the machine has no connection. So this is the current scenario. The future scenario is a scenario where you have digitized the process, whereby your merchant has one wallet, which is similar to your wallet, and you can move money from either wallet. You must allow the pre-existing players in the ecosystem to exist. Remember what I started with when I said competition is for losers. If your entire innovation mindset is to make somebody disappear, then you block so many possibilities. As you innovate, you must innovate in a coexistence space. What you then do is you build around that space, and either you merge and grow together, or see what happens in the rest of the world. In every single day, you're hearing either Google's buying someone, Amazon is buying someone, MasterCard is buying someone. That is how we're going to grow our innovative businesses in this country. If we innovate to make somebody disappear, then we're not actually going to grow. We need to innovate to add. It needs to be an additive innovation conversation, which now also takes you back to the question about infrastructure. So the infrastructure also has, you need to start thinking about that process as you think through your journey down the innovation conversation and ecosystem. I wanted to bring back another conversation here. If you remember, I showed you this particular slide, right? Now, we're investing in these things, and these are right at my office, and we're buying more. This year we'll have at least 500 bikes. And by the way, the other interesting thing we're saying is 70% of those riders will be ladies. Okay, and that has nothing to do with fintech, but I just thought to add it in because it's exciting. What we're doing here now is we've built this ecosystem. I have millions of people in their houses wanting to buy from home. There is a platform they're able to buy from. We have simplified your payment process with a wallet. So once they have the wallet, regardless of which is their first option of financing, they can move their financing to the wallet and make the payments. We now create a complete ecosystem. We've enabled any shop on the market to be able to put their items, so it doesn't have to be the big shops. Your corner shop around the corner, your fruit seller around the corner can put their items online. Your food people can put their items online. If any of you have ever used eBay, which simplifies everybody to create a shop, it doesn't mean that we create an eBay in Uganda. We look at our current situation in Uganda and you need to innovate around that space. So we're allowing anybody who wants to go online to go online. They put their items online and they can sell. We're giving them a point of sale and we're coexisting with everybody else in the ecosystem. We've also partnered with a product called Uber Connect. So if any of you have an Uber app, you pull out Uber right now because we do not have riders. You can either get a car or you get Connect. Connect means that you can get anything, any parcel delivered from any point. So this shopkeeper will only need to have an app, which eventually will be integrated into the platform. But he just needs an app. Once he's received your order, he's packed it, he takes out his Uber app, calls an Uber, he already has your location, the bike comes, picks up, and delivers to the destination. Now you're seeing about the entire innovating around an ecosystem. Okay. So without this particular partnership, you wouldn't have to do that. So you're going to see players in the market who have done silo growth, they're going to disappear. It's a prediction we're making, but the numbers are clear. Siloed partners, siloed e-commerce solutions, unless you're an Amazon, you cannot last in the new market. So the coexisting piece again that I talked about earlier, and I'll take you back to that slide, is really where innovation needs to be sitting underneath the rest of the organizations. And that's how you innovate. Somebody earlier on, you asked a question about how does NFT grow? How did we grow NFT to 7 countries? And yet, it's hard for the rest of, for a lot of more people. NFT grew because you grow through humility. Our job is to provide resources for companies, and we do provide resources for quite a lot of the companies. If you go to a country like Rwanda, most of the banks we provide resources to. At one time in Dar es Salaam, we provided resources to all the network operators who compete with each other. But your growth is through your humility in terms of you do your work, but underneath, your client must be the person shining at all times. If you shine more than your clients, then you will not survive. The person paying you is the person that must always shine, and you must make every effort to make them shine because they're your paycheck, right? I really want to emphasize the interconnectedness and the fact that the word fintech needs to slowly disappear. And when we're thinking about our innovations, we need to be thinking about interconnections, because interconnections, at every interconnection, there is a financial transaction. So financial services are really at those interconnections, and how do you innovate around that interconnection? And when you're innovating around that interconnection, the rest of the physical bits need to figure out how they disappear. If we decided that mobile first, then your solution must be able to be delivered end to end via mobile. Your point of sale, your wallet and your point of sale must be able to be delivered on the same platform. So there's no need. I think a lot of us saw agency banking grow a few years back. I was never a fan of that process because I thought they focused heavily on the infrastructure, not the solution. So it was how many POSs do we sell? How many people have a POS? But all you're trying to do is make a financial transaction. But their focus was heavily at the infrastructure space. And I'm just going to slide back to this conversation we had here. So for me, agency banking, as much as it's still working, and I don't see it sustaining a lot, because they're focused so much about these middle pieces, the infrastructure around it, and not the solution. Because when you go back and you think about the solution of agency banking, there's absolutely no reason why 2 Android devices cannot fulfill the entire agency conversation. But there's an insistence on actually having the physical devices in play. And then there's so much focus on the physical that they forgot why they were even innovating in that space. So we can talk a little bit more about that. And we've talked about the marketplace. And I just want to end with really what this conversation means. And yes, we are able to do all of this through the click conversation. But what we're saying is we can send a payment via a WhatsApp message. And it can be, so any social media platform, as long as I can send you a message, I can send a payment request. And I'm thinking you're realizing the disappearance of infrastructure and the focus on actually serving the value transmission. Because all we're doing in fintech is we're moving value around. When I send When I send 10,000 shillings to someone, all I've done is just moved value. So the entire banking ecosystem, the entire fintech system is how do I move value? And when we focus on how we move value and not what moves value, we're moving into the direction that we will make us the organizations. So before I end, I'll take you back to all of these organizations here. If you go back and just Google each and every one of these organizations, they move value. They don't move devices, they don't move items, they just move value. So our question about the fintech infrastructure should be changed to value conversation. What's that fintech value and how do we transfer the value? How do we evolve the value? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I am now at the end of my slide and I hand back over for conversation. Thank you, guys.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Badru, for that insightful kind of discussion. I understand we have a number of participants who could probably not have had much to do with fintech, but they probably have an idea and kind of in depth of what we're talking about. So before I call in for questions, for those who will be asking you direct questions, someone wants to hear from you. They have always known NFT for probably human resource consultancy. So I think some are surprised that you're into a lot of tech, logistics, and etc. So they would want to just hear from you how far you've been able to, how much you've been able to do to diversify into a number of lines at NFT.
Yes. Remember what I said. I mean, why are we in business?
Yeah.
Right? We're in business to deliver value and be paid for it.
That's true.
And at the end of the day, unless I shift completely into computers and I'm purely behind the PC, there will always be an individual, there will always be humans. So really if you to classify NFT or a managed services company, grew through the HR business, obviously, because the managed services at the time were really people. We're still heavily people-based, but technology is really a very key, and technology has been a key farm for us. My history is really in the technology space.
Yeah. Probably the person may need to look out for the other small book of Who Moved My Cheese. You'll know that now that the cheese moved somewhere.
Yes.
You also have to go and look for the cheese. Thank you. Someone also is also saying that the discussion is interesting, and he has also been having a concept himself to do with electric scooters. So
Yes.
he's wondering how you'll be able to control the theft of parts, the regulation, hacking of systems, networks. I think he's trying to talk about the entire kind of infrastructure. And that is the question that we would want to answer. Are we ready? Are we prepared? Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the right networks, the regulations? So these challenges could be some of the things that probably people like you would be looking at to solve before you go in for that business.
Interesting. I always tell people there's certain things that are part and parcel of life.
Yeah.
Theft has been there before we were all born, and it will be here way after.
Yeah.
Right? It can never stop you from doing something. It is part and parcel. And that is why all societies have law and order in their ecosystems. So theft should never stop you from actually thinking or doing anything. It should encourage you to innovate around avoiding it, but it will always be there. Yeah. However, with technology nowadays, it is, I think it's a list of your worries. You can lock your equipment, you can geofence your equipment, you can track your equipment. Technology allows us to do so much that there's so many ways we mitigate theft. The other thing is hacking of systems. Again, it's part and parcel of every day. Networks and other challenges that would directly affect the scooters. You see, the thing about electrics that I love is that electrics just simplifies everything around us.
Yeah.
If you look at a normal motorbike with all the moving parts, an electric bike has a motor, a battery, a controller, and a frame, right? Mm-hmm. So that ecosystem works. Then when we put technology around it, I know who started the bike, I know who's moved it to where, but all of that I know because they have paid. Okay. The minute, and this is something else that I wanted to share again, that we have a school of, we have this conversation about privacy. And unfortunately, the day you stop carrying money and you move into digital transactions, you've decided to move into a world where your data is there and it is recorded every time you use it, because it's the only way that I can record a transaction. So yes, once you've paid, I know who was paid. I know everything about you. So it's very hard to worry about theft. You shouldn't worry about it. Technology can mitigate 80% of your fears.
Yeah, maybe in reference to that, Badru, I also realized that to do with the support kind of, let's say, regulation by the government, to do with financial institutions, control of, for instance, credit and etc., has also been a problem to most of the entrepreneurs who would want to go in for such ventures. What are your thoughts about regulation? And maybe before you come in, I want to let you know that in attendance to our meeting, we have a good representation from the government. We have Dr. Peter Ngatejize, who works with Ministry of Finance in the Private Sector Development Unit, who also happens to be the board chair for Miic. And also we have a number of officials who are from the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Technology, who are listening to the discussion.
Oh, great. So I will be careful in my wording.
No, no.
But I'm not known for that, so I'll just be candid.
Please.
See, I think we're very unfair to our regulators when we expect them to guide us in a space that they haven't got a clue on. And we're also equally unfair to them when we allow that to be their responsibility.
Yeah.
As we innovate, as we look at all these new crazy ideas that are able to be done, we need to understand that there's going to be a learning phase. We need to have the patience to teach and share with those who are tasked with the responsibility of doing the regulation, because still regulation is needed. So I wouldn't expect the regulators to really be able to understand and appreciate where we're driving technology. I would say that we need to invest in assisting them. Yeah. And I would never allow, I would tell you that please do not allow regulation to be the reason why you don't innovate. You should be challenging the system every day and work with the system to look at your way.
Yeah. Great, thank you for that. Alan is asking that why are investment platforms like crowdfunding, venture capitalists, angel investment in Uganda taking quite a long to be adopted? And we have seen this happening in our neighboring countries and also in Europe and America. So we would expect Uganda where we can have a digital platform where people can invest into other companies using the available infrastructure like you have been sharing with us. Your thoughts?
Unfortunately, we cannot do a poll, but if we could do a poll, I would ask how many people on the panel have bought a little plot of land somewhere. Okay. How many people on the panel are probably building something somewhere? Now, there's a whole new conversation around why VCs and crowdfunding platforms work well in different markets than our markets. In our markets, the first time when we get a bit of money, I'm going to buy a plot of land because our culture has always told us, buy a land, build a house, so put some rentals up somewhere. Then those in our society, again, who have a lot more disposable income, when they do get some money, put up a shopping mall, build an office building. So the culture is not in, there is a lot of money in the economy, but we have not yet created the right conversation to attract the people with the money into this space. And we need to appreciate that for us to fix that. If we don't appreciate that, we're not going to figure out how do I convince Mukwano to have a fintech? How do I convince these guys who own 5 malls downtown to invest in a fintech? The time it takes him to build that mall, had he put that money in a particular fintech, it would be a different space. The solution we've just shared bits of on Click, if you look at global products, if you look at WeChat, if you look at Venmo, what the Click platform has here in Uganda is way more than what those platforms are capable of doing, right? But I cannot put a crowdfunding in Kampala and even expect to get 10 million shillings because our culture is not there yet, and we need to work on that collectively. Okay? Yeah,
that's right. Great. So I will now allowing Alan Rule, who will take us through in the last very few minutes.
Okay.
We have, I think, 8 minutes to go. So I'll give Alan about 3 minutes, and then I will have Dr. Peter Ngatejize to make a few remarks as we wrap this up. Alan?
Yes, thank you so much, Gilbert. And thank you so much, Badru, for having you over here today. We've been following a really interesting discussion, especially from someone who's been in the field for some time. So we appreciate your time so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, fintech is quite wide, and we can see it taking a very huge shift. And I would say having some discussions within the ecosystem with a couple of banks and other fintechs, it is some space which I think banks took long to really digest into regarding how they could bring on outside stakeholders to at least drive this. So I had a discussion with one of the heads of innovation at some bank, and they said yes, they were a bit late in regards to embracing fintech solutions for the probably SMEs and maybe also for the lower end people. But the thing I really want us to engage on, especially when Mr. Badru is still around, is that banks have really held themselves back in terms of providing platforms, which I would say would really be beneficial, or platforms that people that develop fintech solutions, like developers, could leverage so much on, to at least extend such services to really prospective groups like SMEs in Uganda. I would give a very simple example. Right now in Uganda, MTN has moved so fast in terms of extending its Momo APIs for probably people who are developing fintech solutions on top of it. But then if you look at the tremendous job that Safaricom, our neighbors here in Kenya, are doing, they've developed this kind of really diversified platform, which developers, businesses are leveraging on in the aspect of at least trying to build their own solutions on top of what maybe Safaricom has provided in terms of infrastructure. And in this space, we are now seeing businesses and maybe consumers as well engaging so freely and easily in that it will really take me not so much long for me to adopt probably a solution from Safaricom, which is going to enable people to pay into my business. Now, I'm bringing that simply because they've really put a diverse platform for developers, which is so dynamic compared to ours here in Uganda. So now moving it back here is that MTN is trying to push for that so much, but banks are still a bit reluctant, though they are really optimistic about it because they've seen the disruption that mobile money has caused. So just as Mr. Badri is still around, I would simply want to get his insights first of all. Why do you think banks are optimistic about this, but they are still laying back in terms of the trust of such platforms to open up to probably external stakeholders, more so developers, and then the consumers?
Okay, that's a good question, and I like the way you've looked at it from. Now, if you were a bank that has monopolized an economy for 50 years, and all you have done in that economy is get 5 million people out of a population of 44 million. And then there is this technology Jumpstart who in 10 years has got 22 million people. Obviously you would feel threatened. So the banks are now focusing their energies as trying to be the MTN. MTN is focusing its energy on trying to be the bank. But no one is focusing their energy in serving the population. Remember what I said, competition is for losers. As long as these two are focusing on their competition, they've left space for the rest of those innovative many out there to come in and fill that gap. And that gap will be filled as long as they continue fighting for the small. We're going to come and fill in that space. I've just shown you an ecosystem that we're able to put together, that entire ecosystem could exist completely outside the banking ecosystem. Absolutely completely outside the banking ecosystem, because we're able to move the transaction, make payments in real time. So why do I need a bank? So, and that is just one example of many. So if the change doesn't happen in the bank space, you're going to see that void space filled by 30, 40 companies that are going to be doing it. If you look at, when I showed you the top 10 fintech companies in the world, did you see a bank? There was no bank, because that is what's happening. And what's happening there is going to happen here. And I think in a very short way, as long as they're competing against each other, competition is for losers, they're not going to make it. That will be my conclusion to that point. They need to look at the bigger picture. There's 22 million people who are transacting on a daily basis, but do not have access to a loan. The bank has a bank loan system, and it can only give to 5 million people. How about the bank and the mobiles integrate so that everybody on the mobile network can borrow up to 10 million from a bank? Can you imagine what that impact is for that economy? So those are the things that now this is where regulation is behind, because regulation should be able to see that now. Remember, I said we moved from slow regulation to reactive regulation to proactive regulation. Once we move to proactive regulation, then these things will actually disappear and the friction will disappear. I'm not sure. I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think members are trying to capture this because this is an ongoing discussion that we are having, that we are engaging some bank, which is really optimistic about us trying to innovate for the space for them, same way the telcos are doing. So maybe my last one would so much really be around the supply chain. You presented something really good, and I'm curious. The supply chain of Uganda, especially to do with the most vibrant sectors in Uganda, which is agriculture, we're still having one challenge. The Ugandan farmer at some point is having a challenge of negotiating prices, especially on the very best prospective markets. Reason why is that fintech is only capturing the aspect of someone collecting payments, but then if you look at some developed countries, maybe say like in the Netherlands, we're having fintech also capturing the space, which allows probably a business or maybe say like a farmer to negotiate probably around all that. And what they're doing this is that they build platforms which probably standardize given sectors. For example, maybe say like farming, where farmers are able to probably list items they have. So see it more like a commodity exchange kind of market.
Yes.
But then in Uganda, we are having a challenge that the commodity exchange market is not so really opened up to everyone. And it's because, I don't know whether it's because of awareness of information amongst the farmer groups. But then, driving back to the point is that why do you think farmers are still finding a challenge? Because fintech is only capturing the point of payments and collections, but then how can they now really draw into the picture of now also having a platform for fintech, which can also help them at least negotiate freely prices with the markets. So I'm wondering whose discussion could it be to at least help them address such issues, because that is one of the farmers' major issues that they're having a challenge in there.
Okay, let me just respond that quickly, because the whole essence of why I even brought in that PowerPoint is to explain exactly that technology is able to liberate that farmer, because now, once we rolled out our platform, that farmer will be able to put his product on the platform. We will enable that farmer to be able to sell his produce and receive his revenues. The buyer will be able to find a transport solution that will go and collect that produce from the farmer. So basically the whole essence is disintermediate and then create the solution. So with our platform, onboarding is easy. So anybody will be able to onboard, be it a farmer, be it a retailer, be it a corner guy in the shop. Now, when we bring in the delivery conversation, which is what we're working with. So on the retail side, we've started by working with Uber, right? So, and then we knew that process still had some challenges because of the regulatory and the numbers. And what we have then done is, our business as NFT is we're very good at managing people. That is what we build. That is our core. So why don't we now go in and manage the border fleet that will supply this platform? We are able to do that because we have the technology. So the pieces are going to come together by identifying exactly what you've identified, and then not waiting for somebody else to fix that solution, by now being able to put these pieces of the jigsaw together and fix. So exactly as you said, it is exactly what we're looking at now. And the platform, the technology is there. It's just on how we move it into the market and that conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that has been put clear. And maybe last but not least is about exports. I wouldn't leave this out.
Alan, I'm worried you may not ask that.
One critical one. One critical one. The last one probably. Yeah. So Mr. Badru, currently you may be aware that PayPal is not available for opening up accounts in Uganda, and which is one thing that developers, probably people who are exporting IT services from Uganda, are facing a challenge in that. So much as there are many other options out there, but then of course, platforms like PayPal have had their own advantages over the others. So I'm just curious, I'm just trying to find out, good enough regulators are in here as well. What do you think was the issue in that, in case you've heard about it? And then, which other best way would you think probably people would export their IT services from Uganda using fintech services that are available globally?
I would say there are very many other avenues for accepting and being able to accept payment internationally. I'm sure, I think there's a gentleman called Andre somewhere in the platform. He might come in and talk about it. But we here in Uganda have PayPal and more. We just don't know how to market it. Because all PayPal is a back-end integrated payment solution. So if somebody is paying for my product from anywhere around the world, they most probably have a Visa card or a MasterCard as the core rail that works underneath. So once I have any of those two, we have very many integrated solutions. Remember when I talked about the path and I said we move to integration, right? And then you just interconnect with all the different players. At the end of the day, you can do that. So I wouldn't be worried too much about PayPal. I think we need to be able to develop our own platforms and enable somebody to be able to make a transfer to our platform is quite straightforward. I think the financial systems are far integrated from when PayPal became what it is.
Okay, thank you so much.
It won't be an issue at all.
Great. Badra will now request you to give us your final thoughts, your final probably advice, recommendation, and some word of encouragement to our innovators and entrepreneurs who may have been affected by the pandemic, but they need to recover, thrive, and grow big. From your comments, we shall then again have Dr. closing this up.
Okay. Thank you. I think for me, the advice I give to anybody is keep innovating, keep challenging, and keep asking why.
Yeah.
As long as you're able to keep asking why, even when you don't, the best why you can ask is when you do not have the answer to the why, because it keeps you thinking. Pandemics will come and go, but innovate around that space. Don't be tied into the structures. Keep asking the question, why does something exist? Mthamba said the 5 whys. If you are able to keep on asking that and believing that when it comes to technology, nothing is impossible. As I said to you, the simple product, I've talked about the Click product, as comparing Venmo the other day with Click, and Click has far more features than Venmo does, right? And Venmo is multi-million-dollar product in the US. So with technology, the challenge has been flattened. We can literally able to achieve anything we need to achieve, but we just need to believe that we're able to do that. I will just end with that. Nothing is impossible when it comes to technology. Let's challenge everything every day and we'll get there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So we shall have Dr. Peter Ngategize to make the final remarks, and then we shall close this up. I must apologize. We are ending this 10 minutes late.
Thank you very much, Gilbert, and thank you very much, Bandru. It was a pleasure listening to you twice in a week. I want to thank the Miic team, Gilbert, and the company for having made this possible. Badru, there are many things from, I hope you know the history of Miic. You remember the meetings we used to have many years ago. Now I'm glad there is an interlocutor in this space. But there are several things I would want you to go thinking about that I think are important. Number one, the NDP3 is in the process of being launched. It has 2 chapters, one on digital transformation and the other on innovation, technology development and transfer. For us, in the space of private sector coordination and development, we would want to hear your thoughts about the content and operationalization of those 2 programs. And if you remember the engagements we used to have years ago, to also advise how we can sustain this kind of engagement similar to this exercise that you have just gone through. Point number 2, regulation has been mentioned. We have a business business licensing and regulatory reform committee chaired by former Minister Henry Sendaula. We need to get into this space, although regulation must be follow the innovation. I think it might be interesting to pick your thoughts at an appropriate time on how we can make this committee relevant in this space. I have taken a note of a few thoughts you had that fintechs might disappear. We have talked about the Uganda Business Facilitation Center, the structure that's being built at Kororo, where we want to have a one-stop center for business services or public service delivery, and even beyond, the Huduma model in Kenya and what have you. That's another space that I think what you have talked about might be useful. I will end, not that I've exhausted my points, but I know Alan took more time than he should. And I think, Gilbert, next time you allow people to shoot questions and then discussions be held either later, offline or otherwise, so that we don't build a culture of going beyond time. Time is an important thing. But I've liked the discussion about farmers. For a long time, we have talked about subsistence farmers. They are rural, market, the problems, prices are all over the place. I think we need to have one of the innovators in this space taking this forward and trying to see what we can do within this third national development plan. So my points are scattered around that area. The main message is thank you, Badru, for being available. Thank the team at Miic for doing this, for arranging this, and all the stakeholders who are listening in, and hope that each one of us has picked something and that there will be an interest in participating in the next program that comes up. So enjoy the weekend. Let's stay connected on WhatsApp or whatever media, and let's really stand up and be counted in terms of delivering this economy of ours. Africa has demonstrated that we can move faster and be competitive. And that's what basically we are expected of as a private sector development unit, making our enterprises to be competitive domestically, regionally, and globally. And I think we can do it. We have a youthful population, infrastructure is coming up, the minds are at their best. So let's together do it. Thank you very much. I don't want to take more time than I have. Thank you, Badru. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, let me thank Dr. Peter Ngategize for always joining in and giving us 1 or 2 words of encouragement. We thank our guests, but we cannot thank you anymore. You have given us quite a number of of insights into our discussion, but also about 90, 100 minutes of your time have really been precious to us. I know they are precious to you, but our participants must have gone home with something. So I won't take much of our participants' time. Let me thank you all for being part of today's discussion. Again, we shall have time to discuss more of this next week, Friday. And if we can get more time with the Badru some other time in the future, we can always bring him back to share more. Thank you so much. And I also want to wish you a great weekend. Let's keep working hard, let's keep innovating, and let's keep changing the world. God bless you and have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.